We have a really exciting program for everyone this morning. We have members of our 10 Most Selections Committee who will be joining me in just a moment to announce the 10 Most. We'll also have our board president joining as well. The second half of the program, we'll have advocates from each of the 10 sites speak about their site, what the 10 Most listing means to them, and their efforts to date. I hope that, for folks that aren't familiar with Preservation New Jersey, I hope that we have both, friends and also new friends joining us today. Preservation New Jersey was founded in 1978, and we are the only statewide member-supported preservation organization in New Jersey. We have a number of different programs. We have the 10 Most Endangered that you're here today. We offer the Preservation Perspective newsletter on a quarterly basis. We have educational programming on a monthly basis. And we're starting to get back to something we did pre-COVID, which was tours, and we'll be launching some of those later this year. You're welcome to connect with us. I wanted to put this slide up front and also in the end via email, our website, phone, and if you're watching and you want to share on social media today, you can use the hashtag 10most2021. I'm now going to bring in, let me make sure he's a panelist. Oh. Well, I will introduce and thank our 10 Most Endangered subcommittee that's comprised of Matthew Pisarski, our board president, Janice Armstrong, Deborah Kelly, William Pena, myself, Courtney Mercer, Michael Mills, Barton Ross, and Michelle Racciopi. This group has meets several times over the course of the year, reviewing nominations and then connecting directly with the advocates for our 10 Most sites. So thank you so much to this group for all your hard work throughout the year. I also want to thank our sponsors. This year, we have sponsors for the 10 Most program, and we're so grateful to HMR Architects, Krylik Conservation, Architectural Window Corporation, the Lit Law Firm, Quadrille, Harrison Hamnet, and Mills Insuring Architects for their support of the 10 Most program. Before we go into each of the 10 Most, which you just caught a glimpse of, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about the history of the 10 Most Endangered Historic Places program. This program is in its 26th year. Last year, we celebrated 25 years. This year is 26. Things look a little bit different last year and this year with our virtual announcement, as opposed to our in-person announcement that usually takes place down in Trenton at the State House. But it's wonderful that this medium allows us to have so many people involved. The 10 Most Endangered Historic Places program spotlights our irreplaceable historic, architectural, cultural, and archaeological resources in New Jersey that are in imminent danger of being lost. The act of listing these resources acknowledges their importance to the heritage of New Jersey and draws attention to the predicaments that endanger their survival and the survival of historic resources statewide. The list is generated from nominations from the public and aims to attract new perspectives and ideas to sites in desperate need of creative solutions. Several challenges face the properties on this year's endangered sites list. Two of the sites on this year's list are entire municipalities, highlighting the immense variation in local tools available for preservation in New Jersey's cities and municipalities. The list also includes two religious sites that provide important histories of New Jersey's African American communities and point to the challenges faced by religious congregations since the 2018 New Jersey Supreme Court decision to prevent New Jersey Historic Trust grants to religious structures. Preservation New Jersey proudly points to many properties previously listed among the 10 Most Endangered that have been saved and preserved or rehabilitated and become part of the community once more, and community economic boosting assets, character defining assets. As we announced this year, we're really encouraged by news from some of our sites from the past years, stories like the Wallish Homestead that now hosts yoga classes, tours, and other beautiful events at their site. It was included on the list in 2012. And also the Kruger Scott Mansion, which some of you might have caught a glimpse of at our virtual annual meeting, which is now a makerhood. It was listed on our 2011 10 Most list. The advocates, some of whom you'll meet today, continue to move mountains across the state since their listing on the 10 most, and they continue to leverage the publicity and attention brought by their listing to bring these resources back to useful life. An important note is that although our 10 most properties list is published once per year, the fight for historic preservation goes on all year. This year, in addition to our 10 most announcement, we have added several programs, several educational programs to help advocates as they work to preserve the sites. The first 2 sessions will be in June. The first will be called Communicating the Value of Preservation, and the second, An Introduction to Public Relations for Historic Sites. Again, we are fortunate to have this entire 10 most program sponsored by HMR, Krylik, the Lit Law Firm, Architectural Winter Corporation, Quadrille, Harrison Hamnet, and Mills and Shoring. So without further ado, I am going to turn the reins over to our 10 most subcommittee member, Deborah Kelly, and she will read to us the first 3 nominations to the 10, or the selections of the 10 most endangered historic places in 2021.
Thank you, Emily, and good morning, everyone. Our first site is the Allen AME Church in the city of Cape May County. The Allen African Methodist Episcopal Church, built in 1888 on Franklin Street, is an important African-American landmark in the Cape May Historic District. The building was the home of a congregation who left the Cape Island Methodist Church and moved into a former church on Franklin Street in 1845 before erecting the current structure. Within 2 square blocks stand civic institutions, churches, and the center of the historic African-American community in Cape May. Over the years, the AME Church has served as an advocate for education and provides support to members in need. An accidental fire occurred to the entrance tower in 2018. The tower was removed and a benefactor paid to have the tower opening and roof covered. But the tarp has now failed, putting the building at risk. The city has expressed interest in acquiring the building and restoring it as a historic site. Preservation New Jersey encourages the city to move with all due speed to do so, and to secure the structure as soon as possible, and to restore it utilizing historic preservation grants and donated funds. Our next site is the borough of Cape May Point, also in Cape May County. Located at the southern tip of New Jersey, Cape May Point resembles its original roots as the Presbyterian retreat Seagrove, established in 1875. This borough of only 285 residents and 0.3 square miles is a beach community with a diversity of housing, landmarks, irregular street patterns, and historical landscaping. 33% of the buildings were built before 1955. Many of the buildings in Cape May Point have undergone changes without diminishing architectural merit, which contributes to the borough's distinct community character that deserves protection. The threats to Cape May Point are through beach erosion, demolition, and redevelopment. Cape May Point has a historic preservation element in their master plan, and Preservation New Jersey supports their strategies, including establishing a historic preservation commission, educating the public about historic preservation issues, and maintaining a list of properties that meet the criteria that apply to local historic districts to ensure this unique community exists for generations to come. And our third site is the City of Elizabeth in Union County. The City of Elizabeth's historic resources span the centuries, with colonial homes of early citizens, opulent Victorian homes of the late 19th century elite, and Italianate row houses of factory workers. It boasts many historic churches, Greek Revival civic buildings, including a Carnegie Library, Art Deco theaters, and commercial buildings, as well as red brick and steel industrial complexes. Unfortunately, the historic fabric is slowly being compromised through unsympathetic renovations, neglect, and demolition. Just in the past year, 2 prominent buildings were demolished. The lack of protection has also resulted in the loss of architectural features. The city can control the loss of its historic resources through the adoption of a historic preservation master plan element and a historic preservation ordinance, as well as establishing a historic preservation commission. Progressive policies relative to historic preservation have proven to advance economic development efforts. In furtherance of its own revitalization goals, the city should be proactive in protecting its historic resources before too much of the community fabric is lost.
Thank you, Debbie. The next site is the James Street Commons Historic District in Newark in Essex County. The James Street Commons Historic District is a 24-block area containing some 64 acres of land and possesses the largest and finest examples of brownstone and brick structures clustered together anywhere in the city. Unfortunately, about 190 buildings out of the 425 total in the district have been demolished since 1975. That is about 45% of all structures, of all buildings included in the original National Register nomination. With so many structures lost, the original brownstones that remain become particularly valuable because of how they contribute to and commemorate the visually rich streetscapes of 19th century America. Residents of the historic district have spoken in opposition to demolition of sites at many community meetings and recently at 2 meetings before the Historic Sites Council. Preservation New Jersey charges institutions and developers to think more deeply about ways their new projects can respect the boundaries and corresponding scale and stylistic guidelines of the James Street Commons Historic District to prevent any further out of context development and demolition. The next site on our 10 most endangered historic places is Greater Is He Ministries, the former St. Monica's Episcopal Church in Trenton in Mercer County. St. Monica's Episcopal Church lies in the very center of the Spring Street neighborhood of Trenton. Spring Street was the center of Trenton's middle-class African-American community during the mid-20th century. St. Monica's was included as one of the 34 African-American sites identified in the 2011 publication by Richard Grubb and Associates for the Trenton Historical Society called 3 Centuries of African-American History in Trenton, a preliminary inventory of sites. Originally, St. Monica's Mission for Colored People was established in 1919 as a mission congregation of the Trinity Cathedral. In 1935, a 3-story dwelling located on the church property was removed and the existing 1-story church constructed. St. Monica's was the first Black Episcopal congregation in Trenton. The congregation was merged with that of St. Michael's Episcopal in 1960. The site today is operated by Greater Is He Ministries. The primary threat to the site is the expenses associated with critical upkeep. Greater Is He Ministries leadership would like to upgrade work that was done piecemeal by previous tenants to protect the structure. Preservation New Jersey believes it is critical to identify and save more resources like this one with a direct history to communities of color in Trenton. Preservation New Jersey encourages the city of Trenton to prioritize taking the next steps identified in the 2011 inventory and prepare a nomination for the Spring Street District to the National Register of Historic Places. This site also spotlights how the 2018 New Jersey Supreme Court decision to prevent historic trust grants to religious structures could hamper future fundraising efforts for this important structure. The next property on our 10 most endangered historic places list is the Robert Marshall House, located in Gloucester Township in Camden County. The Robert Marshall House is a 2-story wood frame structure in Gloucester Township. This original farmhouse section dates to 1720, and a significant addition was constructed in 1810. The Marshall House was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2008 for its local significance as a work of vernacular architecture containing distinctive examples of federal period interior features. The home is currently facing the double threats of development pressure and demolition by neglect. While the Town Council has been considering designating the Marshall property as a redevelopment zone, The planning board voted last fall to recommend to the council to preserve the home and consider a recent land trust offer to acquire the property for conservation. The Township Historic and Scenic Preservation Committee has proposed the property serve as a recreational resource and the building be used for educational purposes. Preservation New Jersey agrees that the property offers a unique opportunity as a destination along an extensive trail system that connects Gloucester and Camden counties. I'll now turn the screen over to Janice Armstrong, another member of Preservation New Jersey's 10 Most Endangered Committee, to continue reading the list.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Janice.
Shafer grist mill in Stillwater, Sussex County. For centuries, rural grist mills dotted the waterways of northwestern New Jersey, with industry and agriculture working together and creating the communities surrounding them. The Shafer grist mill in Stillwater is a 19th century intact example of one of these mills. The 3.5-story side gabled building was built in 1844 by Reverend Caspar Shafer. In 2009, the mill was listed on the National Register of Historic Places as a significant example of early sustainable technology and masterful craftsmanship. Sadly, the mill has sat idle since the 1980s and has not lost its importance to the community. Local residents raised $23,000 in the mid-1990s towards stabilization of the structure. Since being purchased by Green Acres and becoming part of the New Jersey DEP Schwartzwood State Park in 2010, the structure receives little care or maintenance due to minimal funding. Preservation New Jersey encourages the state of New Jersey to work with local supporters of the mill to save this important industrial resource. The Shahn House and Studio, Roosevelt, Monmouth County. The Shahn House was constructed in 1936 as part of the Jersey Homesteads, later renamed Roosevelt, a New Deal project established in response to the Great Depression as an agricultural, industrial, cooperative community for Jewish garment workers and farmers. Architect Alfred Katzner was commissioned for the project, and he hired a young Louis Kahn as an assistant architect. Combining modernist design with suburban American ideals, they used prefabricated construction techniques and clusters of housing with common space in the middle of each block. Ben and Bernarda Bryson Shahn, both successful artists, moved to Jersey homesteads in 1938 after Ben painted a mural in the town's public school, and this was included in P&J's 10 Most in 2020. George Nakamisha, a leading woodworker, architect, and furniture designer of the mid-20th century and a close personal friend of the Shahns, designed additions and modifications to the house in the 1960s. The Shahns continued to live in the house throughout the rest of their lives. In 2010, the family decided to sell the house and placed a preservation easement on the property through the New Jersey Historic Trust to protect its significant architectural heritage. The new owners had an interest in Kahn and Nakamisha's work and expressed their intent to restore the house. However, due to work relocation, they were never able to fully occupy the house, and it has suffered from a lack of attention and regular maintenance over the years. The current owners have made some interior repairs and installed a new roof in 2019 through 20, but more repairs are needed. Unless the property receives the full attention it needs and deserves, it will continue to deteriorate. Preservation New Jersey encourages the trust to maintain the intent of its easement and work to ensure the preservation of this important resource.
Okay, Thank you, Janice. All right, we're at the last two. This one, the Tomlinson Mansion in Stratford, Camden County. The Tomlinson House, also known as the Mansion, is a 3-story brick Greek Revival mansion built by Ephraim and Sarah Tomlinson in 1844. The mansion is a brilliant example of Greek Revival architecture. Greek Revival gems, such as the mansion, are rare in South Jersey, given that the area was sparsely populated during this architectural style's heyday. The borough of Stratford's crest features 3 images: the White Horse Tavern, the Whitman Oak, and the Tomlinson Mansion. Of the 3 icons featured on the crest, only the mansion is still in existence. The mansion is the oldest surviving building in the borough of Stratford. In August of 2020, the site upon which the mansion sits was sold to a private developer who plans to develop the site into an assisted living facility for senior citizens. Local preservationists, including the Stratford County and Camden County Historical Societies, have lobbied to preserve the mansion. It is imperative that the site be developed without demolishing or otherwise compromising the integrity of the mansion. And our last category is really a statewide theme: COVID-19's impact to historic resources. The COVID-19 pandemic has been international in its scope and debilitating in its societal impact. For preservation and history nonprofits, it has meant a severe reduction in programming and associated revenue. For historic resources used for commercial purposes like restaurants, performance venues, and more, the impact has been great as well. Though programming may be on hold or have transitioned to virtual, maintenance expenses, utilities, rent, and mortgage payments continue. Historic resources will need our support. They will need us to visit their sites, support their fundraisers, shop in their stores, dine in their gracious hearth rooms, and stay in their welcoming inns. The architecture will last through this pandemic. It's incumbent upon all of us to ensure that the proprietors of these storied places last and thrive as well. Now, with that, we have completed the reading of our 10 most endangered historic places, and I'm going to be asking that advocates from each of the sites speak. Okay. Our first speaker is going to be Harry Belangi, who is from the Greater Cape May Historical Society, to speak about the Allen AME Church.
Well, good morning, everyone. And this is absolutely a pleasure to be here today. The Allen AME Church, as was mentioned earlier, suffered from an accidental fire when a delivery truck turning the corner knocked an electric pole you can see a part of into the front of the church. The pole was carrying 32,000 volts. The church called fire. The fire department had to wait for the electric company, and the church suffered very, very significant damage. The congregation of the church at last count was down to maybe a handful, maybe 12 people. I know that from my association with the Center for Community Arts, another nonprofit in Cape May. When all of this happened, we had no idea what would be going on with the church. And the Greater Cape May Historical Society, we have the Colonial House Museum, the only colonial building in Cape May, and we're open during season, and fortunately we'll be able to open this year. It's free, we asked for a donation. But the society saw this and said, we have a problem here. This has to be saved. So before we knew anything about what was going to be happening, we wrote the nomination, provided the files, the information, whatever, and fortunately this happened and we're happy to be here. In the meantime, the city has negotiated with the organization, the religious organization that owned it, and the city has purchased it. So this is now owned by the city. It has a new roof, and the city is now looking forward to restoring it as a performance space, a meeting space. The Eastland Theater Company in Cape May is supporting this, as are many, many others. Another aside of this, when I was doing tours for CCA, the African American Walking Tour, and this church is an important building in the African American community in Cape May. Today it's very small, but at one point it was 30% of the population, and there were 65 African American owned businesses in Cape May. So this is, as I say, is very important. Additionally, it has a historic pipe organ in it, which was a real surprise to find out. It's a small Hook and Hastings, a well-known company that, of course, pipe organs can be rebuilt, and it should be. So the society was very happy to nominate this. We really are happy to have received this great support from the Most Endangered Committee.
Thank you so much, Harry. Thank you for giving us more context, and it's great to hear those positive updates.
Oh, we're very, very happy about this, and it can serve a lot of uses in Cape May. We have very few spaces for meetings, for performance, anything like that. And this, once restored, will be a great asset. And I do believe that this noting that it is one of the most endangered will help the restoration effort and the grant effort.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. We are on to our next advocate. We will be speaking with John Riley, an advocate for Cape May Point. There you are. Is your I can't hear you, John. So make sure your volume's on. I can't hear you for some reason. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Try again. No. Technical difficulties. We heard you earlier today when we were practicing. Okay. What we'll do is we'll move on to our next speaker, and John, if you want to work on the microphone in the meantime, we'll come back to you. Okay. Okay. Great. All right. Our next speaker is Paula Bornstein, who is the chair of the Elizabeth Arts Council Historic Preservation Committee, and she'll be speaking about the city of Elizabeth. Come on in, Paula.
Yeah, good morning. It's a strange honor to be on the 10 most endangered list. I wish this wasn't the top 10 that the city of Elizabeth has made, but we certainly hope that this will call attention to the veritable extinction that we have going on here. Unfortunately, our mayor has been opposed to a historic commission. We have not been able to find any champion on city council to move something like that forward. So it's been very frustrating. My group, the Elizabeth Arts Council, formed a historic preservation committee to try to bring some awareness to the situation in Elizabeth. And I want to thank Daphne Mancione, whose photos you see here. We work very closely together. The city of Elizabeth has a lot of distinctions in New Jersey history. It was the first English settlement for a while. It was the first capital in New Jersey. And the write-up that is on the web gives a lot more detail about the city. A few of the places that I want to highlight is the Singer Sewing Factory, which was founded in around 1873. It's on the state register, but nothing has ever been done by the city to maintain that structure and to promote it, to do anything to really create a historic, active historic district there. The loss of historic places in Elizabeth is, it's not a new occurrence. This has been going on for decades here. In the 1920s, General Winfield Scott's home came down, and it's been a gas station since the 1920s. A replica was created in another part of the city, and there's not even a marker there, nothing to let you even know about that replica exists. So, there's a Midtown Historic District. We have been yet able to ascertain from the city who actually administers that district. We've lost in this year the YWCA and the Third Presbyterian Church. That photo is there. And the church, that was just through absolute neglect that building came down. So again, we made this list in 2016 when we were trying to preserve the Wyman Parish House. That unfortunately was demolished this year. And again, through neglect. And we hope that this designation this year will spur some action in the city. And we really appreciate the support of Preservation New Jersey. And we'll see we'll see who might contact me after this. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Paula. And this was a big nomination to take on for the entire city, and you did it amazingly. So thank you for putting all that information together. Okay, our next speaker, we're going to go back to the borough of Cape May Point and see if John's having any luck with his microphone. Hi, John. Nope. No, sorry, John, we can't hear you. John, if you'd like to call in with the numbers that I emailed earlier, we can try to get you on with your phone. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're gonna keep going. Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask next two individuals to join us. We have Zemin Zhang from the Newark Preservation and Landmarks Committee and Tammy Holloway from the James Street Residents Association to speak about the James Street Historic District. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tammy Holloway. I am the president of the Historic James Street Commons Neighborhood Association. On behalf of my community, I would like to thank Preservation New Jersey for extending your attention and platform to our endangered historic neighborhood. My family first moved to this neighborhood in the early 1950s. We are a large family, and we continue to have a significant presence and relationship within our community. As with most of our neighbors, my passion and interest for preserving the historic nature of this neighborhood are personal, but also founded in respect and consideration of the city of Newark at large. The culture of our small neighborhood is special because we are centrally located in the city of Newark, and our community borders all the other 4 wards of the city. We joyfully share our neighborhood with visitors and anchor institutions. We are a welcoming community, and we're here today because we need additional support to preserve the rich history and legacy of our neighborhood as we witness rapid demolition. The pace of demolition has increased, which seems to accommodate the standard development appetite for modernization without consideration for improvement by means of preservation. The collection of our unique structures without preservation will essentially wipe out this neighborhood. It's a special place to live and visit here at the historic James Street Commons neighborhood. So we appreciate this designation. We appreciate your partnership and your assistance for increasing awareness of the relevance, legacy, and responsibility for preserving the structures within the historic James Street Commons Neighborhood Association.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
All right. Simon, are you saying any words as well? Or?
Hello.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Tammy. Founded in 1976, Newark Landmarks, formerly Newark Preservation and Landmark Committee, is the city's primary nonprofit organization for historical preservation. It has nominated over 70 local buildings and structures to the National and the State Register of Historical Places. Newark Landmarks extends its profound thanks to Preservation New Jersey for including the James Street Commons on its 2021 Most Endangered list. More than 40 years after being listed on the National and the State Register of Historical Places, the James Street Commons, Newark's first duly designated historical district, sits imperiled today at a critical juncture in the city's social, culture, and economic development. Many area institutions such as Ruggers Newark, Audible, LM Development, and Hanini Groups have recognized the district's assets, both for their historical value and what they mean to the future viability of Newark, which was once America's innovation city. Preservation New Jersey's list is a significant call to stop the ruthless demolition of endangered buildings, most recently and notably by the New Jersey Institute of Technology. At the current rate of demolition, there soon will be very little left to call historic in the James Street Commons, a trend that should frighten Newark's other registered historical districts. Preservation New Jersey's list also call attention to the acquiescence of the state and the city governments in the decisions bringing about these devastating loss. The annual endangered list brings great awareness of the widespread benefit of historical preservation. Let the buildings of James Street Commons carry some important lessons to every historical neighborhood in New Jersey. May their loss not be in vain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tammy and Zeman, and your advocacy for the James Street Commons Historic District. Okay, our next speaker will be Lady Brenda Esau Howard from Greater Is He Ministries to talk about St. Monica's Episcopal Church, now Greater Is He Ministries. Please join us. Brenda, there you are. Wonderful. Okay, take it away.
Okay, good morning, good morning. I'm here with my husband, the pastor of Greater Is He Ministries.
Good morning.
Okay, we are really, really excited and thankful to Emily and the board who made the decision from the Preservation of New Jersey to include us in the 10 most endangered historic sites. This church has such great and rich history, and upon us getting this church, I said to my husband, I just feel like there's history here. I can feel the ancestors here. I'm going to do some research. And in doing so, I found out about the great, rich history, not only of the church, but also of Spring Street, where the church is located. And so to have been nominated to help to preserve this awesome place, I am forever grateful. We're thankful. We've done some work. We placed a new roof on the building. And also we've done some outside work but the help is greatly needed. We are a small congregation, but we understand the importance of preserving historical sites. And so we thank you so much to the Preservation of New Jersey for including us in this. And I'm going to let my husband say some words.
Good morning. Well, good afternoon now. You know, when we first saw this building, we was like, well, there's a lot of work need to be done on it. But once we got in it and I started finding the history out about it, and we even got the history from the lady that grew up here. Her father was the pastor of the church. And she was sharing with me how they held their first NAACP meeting here at this church, and how the church was there for the community, almost like a bank and welfare and everything. And with Spring Street being a prominent street of doctors and lawyers and teachers, they came to this church. So it was very, very moving that we could get it and keep it. And we thank Emily for coming out and sitting with us one day and walking through the building. And we were showing her some of the things that we had done and what needs to be done so that we can keep this history going and not lose it. Because Trenton needs some inspiring places for people. And we're glad to be here. We're glad to be nominated. And we thank y'all for it. So now we can continue this good work. Now, y'all have a blessed day, and we'll be talking again soon, Emily, I'm sure. And you be safe out there, and we're thankful. And I'm just telling you, we're just so thankful. And we just shared with the congregation on Sunday, and they are excited about it. So we was trying to hold off, and then when Brenda said, well, they're going to be doing it Tuesday, I said, well, let's share with the congregation to see how they react. And they're excited about it too. So we thank y'all again. We know that God's going to richly bless y'all so that y'all can continue to do this to help others. So again, we thank you, and you have a blessed day.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. And thanks for your stewardship of this important site. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. So our next speaker will be Sharon Mickle, who is the president of the Gloucester Township Historic and Scenic Preservation Committee, as well as the president of the Gloucester Township Preservation Fund. And she'll be speaking on behalf of the Robert Marshall House.
Good morning. Thank you for this designation on Preservation New Jersey 10 most endangered historic places. The Robert Marshall House was added to the National and State Registers of Historic Places in 2008 after being saved from demolition in 2005 for senior housing. The house had been privately owned and lived in until 2004. And at that time, the structure and its 23 acres were taken in lieu of back taxes and are now owned by Gloucester Township. While looking at the exterior of the house, one doesn't get the impression that it's anything more than a dilapidated 20th century house. But encapsulated within the multiple additions and vinyl siding is a house that has sections from the early 1700s and 1800s, the colonial and federal periods. Inside tells part of its story with some of its original features, like the winder staircase, the windows, the raised panel doors, a corner cabinet with butterfly shelves, fireplaces and punch and gouge fireplace mantles, described as unmatched by any other known farmhouse in the period in the surrounding area. The house sits on a property that borders the south branch of Timber Creek, a major waterway for transportation until the mid 1800s, in an area that was once called Upton and is now Gloucester Township. This same south branch of Timber Creek is also the dividing line between Camden and Gloucester counties. Names associated with the property ownership have been Thomas Stanton, Richard Chew, John Ladd, John Whitehall, Charity Chu, David Wainwright. And then after a few more trades of ownership, Robert Marshall bought the property in 1807, and the property stayed in the Marshall family until the 20th century. Later, the house was used as part of a larger restaurant and banquet hall known as Moffa's Farm Restaurant. So in its lifetime, the house has been a home, a tavern, part of a larger restaurant, a home again, and now a historic structure on the National and State Registers. Since the township's ownership, the house has had shoring up of its foundation. The rotting modern porch additions back and front have been removed. A tarp was placed, and you can see it now, over the leaking roof and chimneys, along with a chain link fencing encircling it to keep vandals out. Funds for a roof replacement were diverted to another historic house in Gloucester Township in hopes of pursuing another grant to finally have its roof replaced. An inspection of the soundness of the building revealed newer rot from water and termite damage. A structural engineer advised that the house be condemned. Once again, the house stood in the lurking shadow of a wrecking ball. However, the township took the advice from historic architect Margaret Westfield to have a structural engineer that specialized in old historic structures to go in and reassess the house. And that inspection concluded that the Robert Marshall House can be saved with additional structural intervention and could serve Gloucester Township for many years to come. So here the Robert Marshall House sits and waits. Having it on this list of Preservation New Jersey's 10 most endangered historic places is bittersweet. Bitter because the house is in such a condition that it qualified, but also oh so sweet to have the hopes of what this designation may come to bring it. So the Historic Committee has a vision for the property to become a stop, a historic destination along a possible greenway and trail system that would link Camden and Gloucester counties. And thank you to Preservation New Jersey for hope for a future for this house. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I love your words and how it's bitter and sweet. So thank you for sharing. Now our next speaker will be from the Shafer Grist Mill, and we will have Andy Martin from the Stillwater Historical Society joining us.
Hello, you see me?
Hello, yes.
So thank you again for putting us on this list. It's awesome, but unfortunately, you know, it's a list that not a lot of people like to be on because it mentions the fact that the building or the district or the community is falling in disrepair. This mill is pretty old. It's 1746 is the foundation. It was burned in 1840. In 1844, what the building you see right now is from 1844. The only thing that's been done, hey, that's not my building. Hey, look at that. So the roof is all slate. That tree that's next to the building, that caused water damage. The state finally got a Band-Aid put on it and was able to replace some of the shingle or the slate, but it really does need a full job. It needs about a $25,000 job. The foundation, if you look at where the water comes out of, there's the tree is causing foundation cracks. And this is an old school modern point masonry job that needs to be done. It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of money and a lot of love, but there's definitely a lot of people who can do that. The stones right there to the right or to the left, to how you're looking at the picture, that was redone in early 2000s by the Historical Society, Green Acres, and they had a bunch of kids in the community. They put it back together. Those are called French burr stones. They are original to the mill. Everything in this mill is original, meaning anything from 1844 to up. I also have donations from other mills that have given us materials because their mills have either fallen in disrepair or they've turned into a private residence or they've just been abandoned. I would love to make this place into like a tourist attraction again, meaning there'll be tours during the weekends when the Historical Society is open on Sundays or Saturdays. We have a fall festival in October. I would love to have it open. 2 years ago, this is what really pushed it. We had a Wintermute found family reunion come in. That was about 2 years ago, just about this time. And when we toured the mill, the local park ranger told us about the water damage. And I was shocked because I live not even a quarter of a mile away from it. I see it from my bedroom window. So it really pushed us to, get going on it because it's such an old building and it has timber foundations. Not foundations, but in structure. We have to worry about post border beetles. So we have to do spraying, but we really do have to do an excessive amount of spraying. So we try to pay that on our own. But this building's perfect for the list because there's not much to fix. But if we don't fix it now, it becomes bigger problems. So I know the preservation was talking about tours. I will definitely do a tour for you guys. It's very easy. We'll talk to the DEP and we'll get somebody to open the mill up for us, and I'll show you everything you need to see. But yeah, I'm definitely for helping you guys out as well as you're helping me out. So, but thank you again for the list. Unfortunately, we have to be on it, but this is the best way to put our calls out, and another point, just to show you the importance of this, in 1834, there was 430 grist mills in New Jersey per that Gazette of New Jersey in 1834. Guess how many grist mills are left in the state of New Jersey? 5 that are complete, and that includes the Clinton Red Mill. This one here is the only one left in Sussex County. That's perfect. I worked at another one in Millbrook Village, and that's not running, and that's actually owned by the Federal Reserve. So otherwise, thanks again, and if you need anything, just holler. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Andy, and thanks for telling us kind of more about the plight of grist mills everywhere. So appreciate it, and we definitely will reach out to you about that tour. So, all right, our next speaker is Shahn from the Shahn House. Are you there, Jeb?
Yeah. Let's see.
Okay, we hear you.
Yeah, I can't get the video going, but you don't need to see me. You need to look at the picture of the building anyway. I just want to say, obviously, as Jeb Shahn, I have a personal interest in this Shahn house, and I happen to live next door to it. The community of Roosevelt was, the plan of the community is actually designated a historic site, but not the individual structures in the town. But one of the qualities of the plan was that many of the houses are one story, 2 houses connected together by 2 garages in an acre of land. And most of the houses in the town back up onto woods that are owned by the town and will never be built on. So the setting is very green and very peaceful. And you can see the downstairs of the original house on the left side there. My mother-in-law told me that she was so happy to move there from New York City because with those long windows in that's the living room or dining room of the original house. She felt so much connected to the outside. But the house now is involved in a word that Emily, you used in your beginning introduction. It's a real predicament because in 2010, when the family decided that it was necessary to sell the house, we heard from various sources that people were considering all kinds of actions that really disturbed us. George Nakashima, the designer of the additions, the second floor of the structure that you see there, has become very prestigious, and he's primarily a furniture maker, and his furniture has become very sought after and very expensive. So we had heard that there were people considering buying the property and removing all the built-in Nakashima furniture in the upstairs addition, including the floors. In the living room that juts out over that porch that you see, the floors are beautiful cherry wood planks, handmade, of course. And then to the left, you're looking at the back of the house. Those two small windows are the back of a much larger addition that covers most of the original house. And the floors in that room are walnut. And so it is a very elegant, beautiful house, but it's significant for really three different reasons. One, the Louis Kahn original house, and then the Nakashima additions, and then the fact that it was owned by my father-in-law, who was a very prominent artist. And so when we realized that it was going to have to be sold, Bill Whitaker from the Architectural Archive at Pennsylvania suggested that we protect it with an easement. And so my husband and his sister bought an easement and donated it to the New Jersey Historic Trust. And the easement concerns all the Nakashima elements, which include also a forum, the foyer at the original entrance of the house, and the entire exterior of the house. And it does not include the interior of the original house downstairs or the studio, because we felt that potential owners should have some leeway in what they did to the house. So there was a tremendous amount of interest, but although the house was comfortably livable, it was old, and all the mechanicals were old, and the roof was not leaking, but it was old. And the floor in the largest studio building, the studio consists of three rooms, and that floor really had to be replaced. So I had an inspection done of the property before it was put on the market, that was made available to the realtor, and also had a contractor come and give a rough estimate of the urgent repairs and what it might cost. So although there was a great deal of interest in the house, people felt discouraged about buying it because of the expense of repairing it, and the fact that Roosevelt, the house is very elegant, but the community is not elegant. They didn't feel that it was appropriate. So then all of a sudden, a young couple who were very enamored of George Nakashima's furniture and already collect the furniture, came out and bought it. And that was probably in 2012, something like that. They lived in it for only 7 months, and they tore out the kitchen, but then were suddenly transferred. And the kitchen no longer is there. And they had all kinds of plans for repairing it and bringing it up to par. And they are full of dreams and aspirations, but nothing gets done except the roof was replaced. But these houses need steady attention, steady climate control. And I recently needed to go into the house because of a electrical situation that involved both houses. And I was very shocked to see how moldy it is. And the walls are deteriorating, the paint is falling off them. The studio was recently broken into by teenagers, and I had to go and see if I could get it securely locked up, and it's really falling apart.
Yeah, Jeb, thank you so much for giving kind of that additional context. I just noticed the time. We have to start winding down. We have 2 more left. So thank you again for giving more information on this important site.
May I just say what my hope is? My hope is that someone who does not need to make an investment that is sound financially will rescue the house and maintain it, and either sell it at a loss to someone who will live in it, or it could be a cultural center. There's a lot of interesting cultural information about it that I can provide to anyone who is interested.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so I know we're kind of we're a little tight on time, but we have 2 more that we want to speak about. So I want to welcome to the program, let's see, Carol Zadino and also John Gentlis to speak about the Tomlinson Mansion. Okay, John, I see you.
Yes, I'm on. I'll let Carol go first.
Okay. I don't see Carol. Carol, you need to unmute.
Carol?
Okay. Well, all right. Well, Carol gets set up. I think John Riley is all set. We've been talking in the chat, so we're going to go back to Cape May Point, and then we'll end at the Tomlinson Mansion. Okay. So let's go back up here. John Riley, are you ready?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yep.
Okay. I'm trying to start the video, but it says that it will not. You gotta open it. It says you cannot start your video because the host has disabled it.
I don't know why that is. I don't know, but
I'm on here if that's.
oh, hold on. So now you're there. Okay, well let's stick with John now. John.
Oh, there we go. Yep.
Okay.
You got me, Emily?
We see you. Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank goodness. 63 years in Cape May Point. I've watched so many changes in this little community. St. Mary's is the Sisters of St. Joe's want to demolish St. Mary's this year. And it's really heartbreaking. It was built in 1850. It breaks my heart because I grew up down here in Cape May Point, 63 years. Cape May Point it was known as Seagrove. Seagrove was built in the 1800s. Everything about Cape May Point, the Pavilion Circle, Lake Lily, everything in the point here has historical homes and everything. And what developers have been doing, like they've been doing all over New Jersey, is knocking down historical homes and putting up these structures with swimming pools. And the latest one was behind my house. That was built in 1876. There was a house on Cape Avenue that was built in 1850. That was knocked down 2 years ago. My heart is breaking because the sisters want to knock down St. Mary's, which is probably the oldest building structure down here. And there's nothing wrong with that building at all. The sisters want to return it to nature. And it's very heartbreaking seeing that. Artists go down, people paint it. It's been known forever, ever, amen. Every time I write to the borough of Cape May Point. They never return emails, so it's very upsetting and sad. The people who have been very supportive has been the Greater Cape May Historical Society. They have been very, very, very helpful with information. I'm just upset knowing that St. Mary's is going to be knocked down. The Sisters of St. Joe's want to knock it down by the end of the year. And a good friend of mine, Bob Mullet, I believe he emailed you earlier or talked to you.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. He owns the Shell Fund in town, the historical Shell Fund, and several other bed and breakfasts in town. He's just a great guy, and he's trying his best to convince the sisters to save it. But Cape May Point should be saved. It used to be called Seagrove, and there's a great book out. If you can see that, that's a wonderful book by Joe Jordan. It tells you all about Cape May Point. So that's all I can say right now. Is that fine?
That's great. No, thank you. And feel free to type the name of the book into the chat, and we'll send it out to everybody. So thank you so much, John, and thanks for your tireless advocacy down at Cape May Point. It's definitely somewhere I'd love to visit.
Everybody's welcome to come down here. My door is always open, and I would love to give people tours. I try to get Mac to do it of Cape May, but they refuse. But thank you very, very much, Emily, and everybody.
Great. Thank you, John. All right. And then last but not least, we're going to go back to Stratford. And we have John and Carol from the Tomlinson Mansion. It looks like everybody is here and has their cameras on. Great.
Okay, well, I'm Stratford's historian, something I didn't know until somebody tapped me on the shoulder and congratulated me. I was appointed because I was the historian of the Methodist Church, which was established in 1892, and they had the history of the town of Stratford in their records. So the powers to be assumed that I would be town historian. And in that, when the history of the mansion, of course, goes back to the Tomlinson family. The last Tomlinson left about in the early 30s, and it was taken over by a military academy, and many changes were made on the inside of the house, the building. The outside pretty much stayed the same, but the I have searched and searched and cannot find any photos of what the inside of the house looks like. The things that are original seem to be the downstairs banister, much of the molding, and in the basement they have not much has been changed in the basement, the original place where they did their cooking and so forth. But unfortunately, the second and third floors were reconstructed to match the needs of the military academy at first. And that was established in 1935. The last classes they had in the military academy were about 1974. People in town remember the cadets there, and in about the early 80s, it was purchased by the YWCA, and it, again, other remodeling was done, and they kind of ran out of money and just walked away. And in the, let's see, it was the Christian Academy took it over. And after the YWCA, again, they made major changes. Fortunately, the outside remains the same. And they left in 2015. After leaving, they had yard sales, and I was invited in to see if there was anything original before it was sold, and I couldn't find anything. Everything was gone or was associated with the military academy up to the Christian Academy. but it was in deplorable condition. People dumped everything all over. The rooms were trashed. So I spent over 4 years, untold hours. They gave me a key and I went in and I cleaned out by myself, cleaned out that building in my late 70s and emptied the trash so it would look presentable to a developer as use. And we thought it would be used as administrative purposes for the developer that is now going to demolish it, he says, unfortunately. And originally they thought they could save it, but then they changed their mind. They left the thing, then came back and said it has to go, won't meet their needs, which of course broke my heart. But I've met with the several meetings with them, and they went from we're going to build a replica, we're going to build a building, and we'll put the front of the mansion on our square building, and I wasn't happy with that. So their final proposal is to demolish the building, save as much as the outside as possible, and build a new one. It would have to be set back according to their plans, but it will be in the original place, just set back. And they said they'll even put the portico on the side, and I didn't know what to agree to, and because it's their property and their building. I mean, that's it. Unfortunately, the deterioration in it has started even while the Christian Academy was there. Before these developers came back to purchase it, the top floor ceilings were collapsing. There was mold there. In fact, John Gentlis gave me a swimming pool to put under one of the leaks. It was so bad. And that ceiling had collapsed. They gave me permission to go in one last time in the fall after they had cut the power and to the building. And the mold, he had purchased a special mask from Home Depot, and the mold was really bad on the top floor. They allowed me to go in again because they had padlocked it and put no trespassing signs one last time, where I took photographs. The mold was even worse. The ceilings have collapsed and they're gone down into the second floor. I have photographs I can share with you anytime you want. The ceiling, the floors of the cupola have deteriorated, they're rotted. And it, like I said, I took such good care of that place, and to see what it looks like now, it just totally breaks my heart. Yeah. Hopefully I would like to see it remain and be restored to its original. If I could understand what the original looked like back when it was a residence. Mm-hmm. But that's my hope, that we can get this thing restored. Otherwise, like I said, they will build a replica of the original building, not the one. Oh yeah, the whole side of the building has ivy growing up it, which went into the was it mortar that they put between the bricks, and that I don't know what they would, how that could be restored. I have no idea. It's sort of, there's cracks now in the main, in the right, the room on the right in the photograph, down that wall on that side where the ivy's growing, there's this crack from the ceiling to the floor. But it's going to take major restoration, but if it is restored, this is what, the picture is what it looks like now. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's in beautiful shape on the outside. It's just the inside. They want me to go through and pick out what they would like me to, like them to keep for the replica that they're building. And I wanted to, the marble steps on the front, I want those, and much of the molding that's on the first floor.
Well, thank you,
So
Carol.
that's where we stand now.
This is definitely a very dire situation that John's been keeping me abreast of. So, John, do you want to just to wrap us up? We have just really
yes,
very little time left. But
yes, Absolutely. Okay. Fortunately or unfortunately, the Tomlinson Mansion had just celebrated its 177-year anniversary this past March, because that's when it was completed in 1844. Yes, it is a dire situation. The developer is coming into the land use board next week for approval. And unfortunately, there's no support from the mayor or council with regards to preserving this mansion. There is a upheaval from the residents that they would like to see it saved. But in order for us to mount a fight, we have to create a nonprofit entity, but that would take too long. And by then the mansion could be raised by, at that time. But it's a gorgeous building. All the repairs that Carol mentioned, all the deterioration, the mold, everything in that building is fixable. We could bring it back to its grandeur, the way it was back then. We had the expert guidance from Margaret Westfield when she went through it, and it is doable. And it's a shame because they want to take the whole property, all 7 acres. They want to plow it all under and make the whole ground impervious, and they want to construct a 5-story senior living facility, which basically our town fathers call progress. And unfortunately, that's a shame, but any advice from anybody zooming in on the meeting would be most appreciated. And it's a shame. I want to thank Emily. I want to thank the Preservation New Jersey members for adding us to the list. Yes, it is an honor. It's bittersweet, but anything that we can do to help you, to help Preservation New Jersey moving forward, I would be more than happy to help. As the former mayor of the town and a former councilman, I agree that we need to reach out to Trenton, to the governor, and get his ear with regards to putting more bite into the law to preserve historic buildings throughout the state, because New Jersey is one of the original 13 colonies. And to have our history being wiped away like this is just absolutely ridiculous. And I do know people up in Trenton. If somebody wants to pursue that, former committee, please give me a call. And once again, thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carol and John. And yeah, definitely, we hope that this event is a jumping off point for new connections and new support. Our board member, Melissa Ziobro, dropped some links in the chat for everyone. And just so you know, so I actually have to go make those, make all the listings public as soon as we jump off this call. So please kind of save those links. And you'll see more information and all the contact information for each of the site representatives that have spoken today will be on those links as well, and just truly a couple minutes after we end this event today. So we wanted to keep everything private up until we had our formal announcement. But it will be public, and you can reach out to each other. There's phone numbers, there's email addresses for all of the advocates that have spoken today. So thank you very much for mentioning that. It's a really important part of this event, is the connections and the connecting afterwards. So that brings us to a close of our 10 sites and our advocates. Thank you so much, everyone who shared. It was truly some really beautiful remarks by everyone. And I think that hopefully we all kind of feel inspired to make a difference on these 10 sites, and also sites across the state and our communities. Now, coming up next, as I mentioned earlier, we have our Summer of 10 Most educational series that's jumping off this in June 8th. We'll have, again, communicating the value of historic preservation, Q&A with Donovan Ripkema, and trying to help our advocates across the state and on our 10 Most list communicate the value of preservation to officials, to the community, to anyone that may be able to help them in their efforts. And then in June 22nd, we'll have an introduction to public relations for historic sites with one of our incredible marketing committee members, Maria Boyce, and that will be helping just the basics of public relations, press releases, communicating with the media, all different tactics that may help as hopefully these sites and other 10 Most going to enter into more attention over the summer after the publication of this list. I want to thank all of our sponsors again: HMR, Crowley Conservation, Architectural Window Corporation, the Lit Law Firm, Quadrille, Harrison Hamnet, the Mills Shoring Architects. It was really wonderful to have their support for this event this year and for the 10 Most program educational series that we're running over the summer. Again, please stay in contact with us. Check out those links again in a couple minutes that Melissa shared in the chat. Reach out to us. Let me give you actually our updated phone number is, I'll put it here in the chat, 973-813-2032. Okay. So you can call us. And again, please feel free to share on social media with hashtag 10most2021. Thanks everyone again for joining. We did record today, so if you had to come in late or jump off early, you'll be able to watch the entire program on our YouTube channel shortly. And let's stay in touch. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.